Welcome to Some Weekly Review, a weekly program where we discuss media through the ages. And today, we are discussing 10 of the most influential animated feature films of all time. Many might say we are currently in a golden age of animation. From groundbreaking stories like Star Wars: The Clone Wars and Rebels, cutting-edge tween comedies like Adventure Time, OK K.O., Let's Be Heroes, and Steven Universe, or new ways of exploring the genre through outlets such as Cartoon Hangover or Netflix, we are now discovering stories not limited by runtimes or other broadcast rules, but we have a lot of previous work to thank for where we find animation today, both as a medium and on a societal level. The pathways of tomorrow's creators were laid by yesterday's visionaries, and so I wanted to look back on some of the greats. Now, I wanted to start off by saying that this list is in no particular order other than chronologically. I decided to discuss this list chronologically as new developments in technology and society's views change what the word influential can mean. And yes, these are all feature films, not television. Though if you want a video about influential animated television, or any other specific videos, just let me know in the comment section down below and I'll try my best to get those videos out to you. But with that said, let's jump right into the list of the top 10 most influential animated feature films of all time. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Released in 1937, I would say this is probably the most important animated feature film, as it was the first ever. Walt Disney's classic practically invented the genre of feature-length animation. Snow White, being their first feature and being produced at the height of the Great Depression, was seen as a huge risk, but one that paid off amazingly for Disney. Multiple legendary animators worked on the film, including Mark Davis, Ollie Johnston, and the rest of Walt's 9 old men. The film was so loved it has been re-released in theaters multiple times, and as of 2016 has a total box office earnings of $418 million. Talk about a success story. Fantasia. If Snow White was a big risk, then Fantasia was a suicide mission. After the success of Snow White, Walt decided to do something a little bit different. Instead of a traditional narrative, Fantasia follows 8 short animated segments that are shown over classical music, composed by Leopold Stokowski and performed by the Philadelphia Orchestra. Ironically enough, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, arguably the most iconic part of the film, was never even supposed to be in it. Originally a silly symphony short designed to bring popularity back to a waning Mickey Mouse, the short became too expensive to turn a profit, and was instead added to Fantasia. And thank God it was. Fantasia was groundbreaking at the time of its release in 1940. Its sound was recorded using state-of-the-art systems dubbed Fantasound. Remember, this was only 13 years after The Jazz Singer, and sound was continually improving. The pioneering in sound recording, combined with its gorgeous visuals and Stokowski's original score, made Fantasia universally acclaimed by critics. Unfortunately, however, because of World War II and its effect on distribution in Europe, the film did not turn a profit. Not as all bad for Fantasia, however. Like Snow White before it, it has been re-released in theaters multiple times, and since 2012 has garnered somewhere in the ballpark of $80 million in box office revenue when adjusted for inflation. The film has also gone down in history as one of the best films ever made. Cinderella. Disney is 3 for 3 on our list, but that's probably no surprise. What might surprise you, however, is that we have Cinderella to thank for the Disney we know and love today, as Cinderella is literally the film that saved Disney. In 1948, Disney was on the verge of bankruptcy, after Pinocchio, Fantasia, and Bambi all lost significant amounts of money at the box office, as they were films that did not become popular until much later in time. World War II definitely didn't help Disney's cause either. During the war, Disney had turned a lot of its efforts to making shorts for the war effort, and now that that war was over, Disney had a decision to make. Turning its attention back to feature-length animation for the first time in 6 years, and facing a debt in the range of $4 million, Walt decided to go all in on one last film, Cinderella. Cinderella was the first film where all of Walt's 9 old men worked together as directing animators. This was a last-ditch, every all-star, every hand-on-deck, ride-or-die situation, and holy hell did it pay off. 2 years later in 1950, Cinderella blew up. It was the most commercially successful film for the studio since Snow White, saving the company and cementing the Disney princess genre as a mainstay. A lot of people attribute that to Sleeping Beauty, but no, Cinderella actually came first. The film has garnered $263 million at the box office, earned multiple Academy Awards, and the American Film Institute in 2008 touted it as one of the best American animated films ever made. Fritz the Cat. If you are at all a fan of raunchy, adult-oriented humor in animation, you have Fritz the Cat to thank. Directed by Ralph Bakshi and based on a comic strip of the same name by Robert Crumb, Fritz the Cat is about as not safe for work as you can imagine. Lampooning college culture in both left and right-wing politics, the film includes drinking, smoking, violence, sex, drugs, you name it, it's in there. Bakshi went through a lot of trouble to get the film made on a shoestring budget of just $700,000, with several studios pulling out due to the content. Up until this point, animation was looked at as largely for kids, an unfortunate stereotype that continues in part to this very day. Back in the early 70s, all we had for adult animation in the minds of American viewers was animated sitcoms like the Flintstones and the Jetsons. For these reasons, Bakshi had to move his studio, dive in without pencil tests, and take real-life snapshots instead of drawing storyboards, all because he simply couldn't afford any of it. These necessities actually lent themselves to the film, however, giving its backgrounds a style that mixes realism and watercolor like none other. The film went on to be the first X-rated animated film in American history, which the marketing team actually used to their advantage. It must have worked because the film, despite mixed reviews from critics, garnered over $20 million in North America and over $90 million worldwide, officially making it the most successful independent animated feature film of all time. Without Fritz the Cat, we might not have movies like Heavy Metal, which is another adult movie I really wanted to talk about in this video, but unfortunately we won't have time for. Fritz the Cat opened doors for new styles of animation to be produced on a variety of subject matters, and for a variety of audiences. Don't tell all that to Robert Crumb though, who apparently despised the film so much, he actually sued the production in an attempt to get his name removed from the credits. He's gone on record saying that he thinks, quote, "it was an excruciating ordeal, a humiliating embarrassment. I recall Victor Moscoso was the only one who warned me, if you don't stop this film from being made, you are going to regret it for the rest of your life." And he was right. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Released in 1988, Who Framed Roger Rabbit alongside The Little Mermaid can be thanked for bringing about the Disney Renaissance of the late 80s and 1990s, once again revitalizing Disney's struggling animation department. Beautifully directed by Robert Zemeckis and produced by Steven Spielberg, the film portrays animated cartoon characters side by side with live-action scenes and characters. This had been attempted before, such as in Mary Poppins from 1964 or Pete's Dragon from 1977, but it had not been done this well up until that point, and arguably still to this day. Add to its fantastic story and beautiful animation, which played homage to the golden age of animation in the 40s, amazing performances from Bob Hoskins, Charles Fleischer, Kathleen Turner, Christopher Lloyd, and more, and you have one of the biggest commercial and critical successes of the 1980s. The film grossed more than $329 million at the box office, won 3 Academy Awards and a Special Achievement Award, and in December of 2016, the film was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Akira. Akira is a Japanese manga graphic novel that ran from 1982 to 1990 and is heralded as one of the greatest mangas and sci-fi stories in history, permanently affecting the genre and medium. In 1988, 2 years before the manga's conclusion, Katsuhiro Otomo, the manga's creator, decided to write and direct an animated film adaptation of his work. While the film was criticized for trying to condense too much content from the manga into 2 hours, it is still considered one of the best Japanese animated films ever made. The film caused an explosion of interest in Japanese manga and anime in the United States through the 1990s, a trend which continues to this very day. The stylistic influences of anime on American creators can be evidenced in programs such as Avatar: The Last Airbender or Teen Titans, and ultimately can be attributed to Akira. Akira can also be considered one of the forefathers of the modern sci-fi story, being compared to landmarks such as Blade Runner or 2001: A Space Odyssey. Akira specifically is one of the first to introduce concepts such as children with psychic powers in a post-apocalyptic setting. Are you fans of shows like Sense8 or Stranger Things? Thank Akira. The Nightmare Before Christmas. The Nightmare Before Christmas, released in 1993, is an absolutely beautiful film. Based off a 3-page poem written by producer Tim Burton in the early 1980s, the film was directed by Henry Selick. The Nightmare Before Christmas, originally a sleeper hit in the early 90s, has gone on to become one of the largest cult movies in Disney's history. At first, Disney was hesitant to produce the film, calling it, quote, too weird for mainstream audiences. And it wasn't until 1990, 6 years after Burton was fired from Disney Animation, that Burton and Selick were able to get Disney to actually fund the project. The film ultimately ended up with an $18 million budget. Production of the stop-motion animated movie took 2 whole years and involved a crew of 120, utilizing 227 puppets, some of which, such as the puppet for Jack Skellington, had over 400 heads, each with its own facial expression. The film also used 20 sound stages for filming, with multiple stages shooting simultaneously. In total, 109,440 individual frames were reportedly shot for the film. All of those years of hard work paid off though, for the film went on to be the first animated film in history to be nominated for the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. Balancing so many themes while using a medium that is painstakingly slow and difficult is never easy, but the dedication of Selick made Nightmare a commercial success. Like other Disney films on this list, it has been re-released multiple times, including being the very first animated film to ever receive a 3D re-release. As of 2008, it has total box office earnings of $75 million, and in turn, opened up Disney and other studios to the idea of exploring the weird. Toy Story. Ushering in one of the biggest changes in animation to date, Toy Story from 1995 was the very first computer animated film in history, and the very first Pixar movie. Directed by John Lasseter, the film was produced after the success of Pixar's 1988 short, Tin Toy. After all, Pixar originally started as a computer company, headed by Steve Jobs. Lasseter pitched Tin Toy to Jobs as a way to help them showcase the potential of the photorealistic RenderMan software. At the time, Pixar was struggling, but Jobs agreed to fund the short with a budget of $300,000, and thank God he did. Tin Toy was a success, and was followed up by more shorts such as Knick Knack in 1989, but they didn't achieve what Lasseter and Jobs originally intended. No, something far greater came along, when Disney, seeing the shorts, wanted to make a feature-length computer-animated movie about toys. Toy Story opened on November 22, 1995, as an astounding box office success, having earned $373.6 million as of 2016. The film was nominated for 3 Academy Awards and won a Special Achievement Award, won 8 Annie Awards including Best Animated Feature, a BAFTA Film Award, and countless others. 10 years after its theatrical release in 2005, it was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress on its very first year of consideration. Toy Story led to major changes in the animation industry, proving the viability of 3-dimensional computer-generated animation, which became the standard for animated feature films just a decade later. The Iron Giant. Before Brad Bird was Brad Bird, there was the Iron Giant. Before Pixar, Bird was working at Warner Brothers Animation and wanted to make a film that wasn't the oh-so-happy tale viewers came to know from Disney. As you can imagine, this project was very hard to sell to his superiors. However, eventually Bird was allowed to make his directorial debut with The Iron Giant, and despite being understaffed and strained financially, Bird and his team finished in record time and still remained under budget. The film eventually saw release in 1999, but even with Bird's hard work, poor marketing, and general lack of faith in the film resulted in it still doing very poorly at the box office, although the film has thankfully gone on to be considered one of the best animated movies of the 1990s. Besides making me bawl my eyes out as a kid, The Iron Giant is known for being one of the first films to mesh traditional 2D animation and computer-generated 3D animation together, with the Iron Giant being rendered as 3-dimensional, while the human characters and settings were hand-drawn animation. In the end, the folks over at Pixar realized how amazing the Iron Giant was, and so Bird moved over to work with fellow CalArts alum John Lasseter, and the rest is history. Bird was able to hone his talents and went on to give us amazing films, such as The Incredibles and Ratatouille, but we shall not forget the beautiful metal colossus that started it all. Spirited Away. Spirited Away, released in Japan in 2001 and in North America in 2002, is a film directed by Hayao Miyazaki. Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli had released several films before Spirited Away, but none that were nearly as popular around the world. As a side note though, if you haven't seen Studio Ghibli's work, you must do yourself a favor and go see all of the movies. Spirited Away continued to fuel a love for anime around the world during the 2000s, kindling the flame lit by Akira 15 years prior. It made Studio Ghibli a household name in the United States, and quickly scored over 30 billion yen at the Japanese box office, overthrowing James Cameron's Titanic as the best-selling film in Japanese history. The film went on to gross $289 million at the worldwide box office, and win countless awards, including 3 Annie Awards and the Golden Bear, the most prestigious award at the Berlin International Film Festival. Arguably most notable, however, was when it won the Oscar for Best Animated Feature at the 75th Academy Awards, being the first non-American, non-computer animated film to do so, a trend which continued until 2005's Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Spirited Away may not have introduced anime to the West, but it sure had a lasting impact in the minds of those who might not have otherwise given the medium a chance. Well, there you have it. 10 of the most influential animated films of all time. If you liked this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. Also, let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of my list. If you think of any other groundbreaking animated films I was unable to mention, please let us know. More of us watching more great animation is good for everyone. Also, please remember to subscribe for more videos just like this one. We upload new video essays and list videos all about nostalgic TV and movies, retro gaming, and more every week. And if you want some more Top Tower, try taking a look at last week's episode of Some Weekly Review, where I took a look back at some of the most underrated Nintendo 64 games. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Silence, signing out. I'll see you next time for Some Weekly Review.